I started noticing the tremor 3 months before anyone else did. It was small at first. Just my left hand, early in the morning, when I held my coffee cup. A slight shake, barely there. The liquid would ripple in tiny circles, catching the light from my kitchen window. I told myself it was caffeine, stress, bad sleep. I told myself a lot of things. I'm 38. I work in finance, numbers, spreadsheets, presentations. My job requires precision, confidence, control. So when my hand started betraying me, I did what I always do. I hid it. At first, it was easy. I switched my coffee to my right hand. I started typing more, writing less. In meetings, I kept my hands under the table or folded in my lap. I became hyper-aware of every gesture, every movement. I'd catch myself mid-reach and pull back. I'd practice holding pens at home, timing how long I could keep my grip steady. It was exhausting, but I managed. I told myself it would pass, that bodies do strange things sometimes, that stress manifests physically. I'd been working 60-hour weeks. I hadn't been sleeping well. My diet was terrible. It made sense that my body would protest. It made sense until it didn't. Then, it got worse. The tremor started happening in the afternoons. Both hands now. I'd be reviewing a contract, and the paper would shake in my grip. I'd be signing documents, and my signature looked like a child's scribble. The loops were jagged. The lines wandered. I started avoiding handwritten notes entirely. I told my assistant I preferred digital files. She didn't question it. Why would she? I was senior management. I could request whatever I wanted. But I was questioning everything. Late at night, alone in my apartment, I'd hold my hands out in front of me and watch them shake. Sometimes it was subtle, a barely perceptible quiver. Sometimes it was violent, my fingers jerking involuntarily. I'd Google symptoms at 2 a.m, sitting in bed with my laptop casting blue light across my face. Essential tremor, Parkinson's, MS, thyroid issues, anxiety, brain tumors. The possibilities were endless and none of them felt real. None of them could be happening to me. I didn't tell anyone. Not my sister, who called every Sunday. Not my best friend, who'd known me since college. Not my doctor, whose office I drove past twice a week. I convinced myself it would go away on its own, that if I just ignored it long enough, my body would correct itself. That acknowledgement would make it real, and I couldn't handle real. I was good at ignoring things. I'd ignored migraines for years, until one sent me to the emergency room. Ignored chest pain until my annual physical revealed high blood pressure. Ignored the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with me because admitting it meant changing something, and change terrified me more than suffering. But the tremor didn't care what I ignored. It started affecting my work in ways I couldn't hide forever. I'd be in client meetings, and I'd feel the shake building in my fingers like a storm gathering strength. I learned to keep a pen in my hand, pressing it hard against my palm to mask the movement. I learned to gesture less when I spoke, keeping my body still and controlled. I learned to hold my coffee cup with both hands and take small, careful sips. I became a master of compensation, a magician performing an endless disappearing act. My colleagues didn't notice, or if they did, they didn't say anything. I was known for being composed, professional, put together, the one who never cracked under pressure. I wore that reputation like armor, polishing it daily, terrified of what would happen if it slipped. But inside, I was falling apart. I started having panic attacks before presentations, not because I was nervous about the content. I knew my material inside and out, but because I was terrified my hands would give me away. I'd rehearse in the bathroom, gripping the sink, trying to steady myself. I'd practice holding papers, holding pointers, holding myself together. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't. Sometimes I'd stand there for 15 minutes, watching my reflection, wondering who I was becoming. The worst part wasn't the physical tremor. It was the fear. The constant gnawing fear that someone would see, that someone would ask, that I'd have to admit out loud that something was wrong with me, that I'd become the woman with the problem, the liability, the one who couldn't handle her job anymore. I'm not sure why I was so ashamed. Maybe because I'd built my entire identity on being capable, reliable, strong, the woman who never needed help. Maybe because admitting I had a problem felt like admitting I was broken, defective, less than. Maybe because deep down I was terrified of what a diagnosis might mean, of medications and limitations and a future I couldn't control. So I kept hiding. I cancelled dinner plans because I didn't want to hold a fork in front of people. I stopped going to the gym because I couldn't grip the weights properly anymore. I started eating alone in my office, door closed, blinds down, so no one would see me struggle with a salad or fumble with a water bottle. My life became smaller and smaller, shrinking around this secret I hadn't even named yet. I stopped dating. I stopped seeing friends. I made excuses. Too busy, too tired, too much work. They believed me because I'd always been busy. But the truth was, I was isolating myself to protect a lie, to maintain the illusion that everything was fine when nothing was fine. Then came the day I couldn't hide anymore. It was a Tuesday in October. We had a major client presentation. I'd been preparing for weeks. The slides were perfect. The data was solid. The projections were conservative but promising. I knew the material inside and out. I'd rehearsed it a dozen times. I felt ready. As ready as I could feel while my hands shook in my lap during the drive to the office. But my body had other plans. Was standing in front of 12 people, senior partners, clients, my boss. The projector was on. I had a laser pointer in my hand, the kind with the smooth metal casing that suddenly felt impossibly heavy. And the second I pressed the button, my hand started shaking. Not a little shake, not the subtle tremor I'd been managing for months. A full, uncontrollable spasm that made the red dot on the screen dance wildly across the slides, jerking from graph to graph like a drunk firefly. I froze. Everyone was staring, not at the presentation, not at the carefully crafted data visualizations, at my hand, at me, at the thing I'd been hiding for 3 months, now fully exposed under fluorescent lights. I tried to steady it. I gripped the pointer harder. That made it worse. I switched hands. That one shook too. I tried to set the pointer down casually, as if I'd planned to, but my fingers fumbled and it clattered onto the conference table. The sound was deafening in the silence. The metallic echo seemed to last forever. Someone asked if I was okay. I said yes. My voice was calm, professional, controlled, everything my hands weren't. But my hands were still shaking, visible to everyone now, and there was nowhere left to hide. No table to slip them under, no pockets to shove them into, no excuse I could make that would erase what they'd all just seen. I finished the presentation somehow. I don't remember what I said. I just remember the feeling of being exposed, naked, vulnerable in a way I'd never been before. Every gesture felt magnified. Every tremor felt like a confession. After the meeting, my boss pulled me aside. Her name is Sharon. She's in her 50s, kind, but direct. She asked gently if everything was all right, if I'd been to a doctor, if there was something I needed to talk about. Her voice was soft, but her eyes were worried. I broke. Not in a dramatic way, no sobbing or collapsing. I just stopped fighting. I told her I didn't know what was wrong, that I'd been hiding it for months, that I was scared, that I'd convinced myself it would go away, but it only got worse. And saying it out loud, after all that time, felt like something cracked open inside me. Like I'd been holding my breath for 3 months and finally exhaled. She didn't judge me. She didn't look at me differently. She just listened. And then she did something I'll never forget. She drove me to urgent care that afternoon. The doctor was kind, young, maybe 35, with tired eyes that suggested he'd seen everything. He did a neurological exam, touching my nose, following his finger, walking heel to toe. He asked questions about my family history, my symptoms, my fears. He ordered blood work. He said it could be a lot of things, most of them manageable. He said hiding symptoms never makes them better. He said fear is normal, but isolation makes it worse. I cried in that exam room, not because of the diagnosis I didn't have yet, but because I'd carried this alone for so long, and I didn't have to anymore. Because someone finally knew, and the world hadn't ended. The tests came back 2 weeks later. Essential tremor, benign, treatable, not Parkinson's, not MS, not the worst-case scenarios I'd imagined in the dark at 2 a.m. Just a neurological condition that makes your hands shake. Common, manageable. The relief was overwhelming, but so was the grief. Grief for the months I'd wasted in fear. Grief for the isolation I'd chosen. Grief for the dinners I'd cancelled and the friendships I'd let fade. Grief for the version of myself who thought hiding pain made me stronger. I started medication. Beta blockers, small dose. It helps. The tremor is still there sometimes, especially when I'm tired or stressed, but it's manageable now, controllable, and more importantly, I'm not hiding it anymore. I told my team, I told my family, I told my friends, and the strangest thing happened. People understood. Some of them shared their own hidden struggles, chronic pain, anxiety disorders, autoimmune conditions they'd been managing in silence. Some of them admitted they'd noticed something was off, but didn't know how to ask. Some of them just listened, and that was enough. No one judged me. No one thought less of me. No one looked at me like I was broken. The only person who had been punishing me for being sick was myself. I think about that presentation sometimes. The moment my hands shook in front of everyone. The moment I couldn't hide anymore. It felt like the worst thing that could happen. Like my worst nightmare coming true. But it was actually the beginning of something better. The beginning of honesty. Because I learned that strength isn't pretending you're fine when you're not. Strength is asking for help. Strength is admitting you're struggling and letting people in. Strength is showing up with shaking hands and doing it anyway. I still work in finance. I still do presentations. But now, if my hands shake, I don't panic. I don't hide. I just acknowledge it and keep going. Sometimes I make a joke about it. Sometimes I don't mention it at all. And it turns out, people respect honesty a lot more than perfection. I wish I'd told someone sooner. I wish I hadn't wasted 3 months in fear and shame. I wish I'd known that the moment I stopped hiding was the moment I started healing. But I know now. Pain grows in silence until you finally tell the truth.